A search for God expanded. 2. Know thyself. A search for God Lesson 2. Know thyself. Introduction. The physical body. The mental and spiritual bodies. Self in relation to others. Self in relation to creative force. The awakening of self. Conclusion. Introduction. Now ye are the body of Christ, and members in particular. Affirmation. Father, as we seek to see and know thy face, may we each, as individuals and as a group, come to know ourselves, even as we are known, that we as lights in thee may give the better concept of thy spirit in this world. When we are asked the question, do you know yourself? Why is it that we cannot answer yes? Within each of us there are certainly great storehouses of abilities and capacities which we have never used. If they were manifested, we would see ourselves in a different light. We would understand the real functions of our physical bodies in relation to our mental and spiritual bodies. Until we are better acquainted with ourselves, we are barriers in the way of our own development. Each of us must first know that we must set a standard of measurement, of valuation, of precept, and of concept. Let us not measure by earthly standards, if we would know ourselves. Rather, let us measure by that which we have found within ourselves to be our ideal, knowing what we believe in, and acting that way. Let us, therefore, be willing to be measured, not by what we have, but by what we give. The Edgar Cayce Readings. Introduction. Thus the entity will find within itself warring urges, until it has set itself to analyze its own sincere, deeper wishes within itself. Spiritually, look within. Know, as was pronounced by the lawgiver of old. Lo, it is within thine own heart, thine own bosom that ye may find contentment and happiness. And as ye give and bring such into the experience and lives of others, ye have same thyself. And those that seek to know self may find the way. Those that find the way become content, and find joy, peace, happiness, even though the way be hard. Those that look for self-indulgences, self-interests, without being tempered with the true love, as of the Father in life to those that seek his way, these find those things that make for hardships, strifes, turmoils. For if that which has been of the creative forces is the directing force, will it not create a body, a mind, in accord? And in acting that way we bring about that which will be the more effective in the manifestation of the divine influence of love, as a merciful Father shows toward the children of men. Thou art the Son of a living God. Act like it, and depend upon those influences. First, study thine own self. Analyze thy activities, and see them not merely from the angle of material gains alone, but as they coincide or may be made to cooperate with thy spiritual ideals. What is thy spiritual ideal? Is it a thing apart, or a portion of thy daily life? Is it a thing to be lived, or is it something to be set on the shelf and proclaimed as the belief, and not applied in the daily life? Be true to self and those things that are prompted from an ideal. Not as to what may be called the ideal of the gimmies, but rather giving. Remembering that God so loved the world as to give his Son. Then, the least thou canst do for thy fellow man is to give thyself in a service that will render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, as it were, but surely unto God the things that are God's. The little things said by others, that seem to be naught to them, stabs, hurts, and produces for the body that of retort that brings detrimental reactions, and the body hates self, and dislikes the surrounding effect of conditions. In the application, then, of mental self, would be in the manner to so fill self's time, self's mental forces, with that as may be accomplished, in the word, in the deed, that the body will continue in finding self satisfied in doing for others. And he that aideth, he that helpeth one, is lending to the Lord. Keep that ever before self, and there will come a peace that has not been felt. Measure self not by self, for who does such is unwise. Condemn self not because self has condemned another. Condemn another not because self has condemned self, for this is judging self by self. Know in whom there is hope, for it comes only from the answering of a pure conscience from within. Ask not who will ascend to bring peace and harmony from on high, or where shall I go to seek peace and harmony abroad. Know it must be created within thine own heart and soul. Thine own self must answer to thy Maker with an all-good conscience. When self can look the world and all straight in the face, and move on towards the better things, forgetting that which is behind, moving on to the higher forces that will be the creating of the faith, confidence, and of the purposes that will be set before thee from day to day, then the inner man will find peace, harmony, happiness, joy and service. For he that is the greatest among you is the servant of all. For the next 12 months, what future can I look forward to, considering my various abilities mentioned, so I can be guided properly for my best service to God and man? This depends upon the manner in which the application is made. It is not so much as to how much knowledge one has, or how much ability one has, but it is how well, how consistently it is applied in constructive associations with individuals, groups, and for purposes and ideal. Study to show thyself approved unto thy ideal. Who is thy ideal? Who is the author of thy faith? Know these deep within self. Then live like that, act like that. Whom should I contact in order to attain my best development? First know self, and yet the very questions within self show as much of that as has been indicated as innate within self. Contact first and foremost that necessary for self to understand, not only to have knowledge concerning, but to understand why life is as it is in material planes. Then apply self in those directions wherein the greater joy and blessings in material things may come to others, and through coming to others give the things in life and in earth that supply the needs of self. This will bring the self into the associations with those individuals, of itself, for and through whom the greater activities may be brought about. The physical body. To know ourselves is not only to be cognizant of the acts of our physical bodies, but to know ourselves as entities, complete factors, capable of knowing all that goes on within and without. This spring of knowledge is tapped only by those who are willing to pay the price. The price is a complete surrender of ourselves, with a purification and a dedication that come only through prayer, meditation, and service. It is along the straight and narrow way, but it is open to all. The water of life is offered freely. As entities, we are miniature copies of the universe, possessing physical, mental, and spiritual bodies. These bodies are so closely associated and related that the vibrations of one affect the other two. Our mental, especially, partakes of the other two, in the physical, as the conscious mind, and in the spiritual, as the superconscious mind. Our bodies are temples of the living God. It has pleased God to so manifest Himself in the world. Our physical bodies are composite units of creative force manifesting in the material world. All parts of our bodies must work in unison, for should one war against another, discord would naturally follow. Each part has its functions, and it is so important that no other part can take its place, neither can any part be counted insignificant and useless. Each organ has its individual functions and desires, which are in themselves holy. The senses make us conscious of the magnified desires or natures of our physical bodies. These are registered in the activities of our physical bodies in such a way that they are stamped upon our very faces. These senses are attuned to the physical, each vibrating according to the training and concentration of the physical forces, seeking expression of the inner self, of which our physical bodies are material representations. For not only do the impressions received through the senses show forth that which is magnified in a single appearance or experience, but also all impressions that have been received through all of our experiences, the registering being in our souls. These are registered in a material way in our physiognomy. The Edgar Cayce readings. 2. Physical body. Ye find thyself, as ye analyze thyself, a body, mind, soul, with a three-dimensional consciousness. Hence ye have a three-dimensional consciousness, as related to the earth and to thy heaven, or to thy Godhead. Study the relationship of one to another, for they are one, even as the Father God is one, but in manifestation, in power and might, has three phases of expression: spirit or soul, mind, and body, Father, Son and Holy Spirit. Just in the same manner that the body is subject to that which is destructive to same, it becomes as a servant of that thing, rather than controlling same. So, as the mind is the builder with those things that are of hate, dislikes, grudges, selfishness, dirty and dark, dingy things that are a portion of every experience, and not with the sunlight of happiness, joy, hopefulness, patience, brotherly love, it, too, becomes besmirched and subject to those things to which it, the mind, becomes enslaved. Give suggestions as to how I may use my time here to advance in spiritual living or spiritual development, and thus require less reincarnations. As indicated, make thy paths straight. Live that ye ask others to be. Do the things thou knowest to do, seeking to know his way with thee. Ask and ye shall receive, knock and it shall be opened unto thee. 4. As ye will analyze the 30th of Deuteronomy, the 14th, 15th, 16th and 17th of John, lo, it is within thine own self. Keep it inviolate. In the make-up of the active forces of the physical body, it, the body, is constituted of many, many cells. Each with its individual world within itself, controlled by the spirit that is everlasting, and guided by that of the soul, which is a counterpart. Or the breath that makes that body individual, and when the body is changed, and this is the soul body, the elements, as a patterned, are of the same. That is, that builded by thought and deed becomes the active particles, atoms, that make up that soul body, see. Then the usage an entity has made of the opportunities that have been and are part of a record, the record of each entity and of this entity, constitutes the life story, the life experience in and through this sphere of awareness. 4. Know, as ye are conscious of, the earth and its system is merely a part of the great universal consciousness. Yet the use of that awareness ye have attained today enables the entity, the body, to be, or to be aware of, that phase of its consciousness. Only by usage does it become a part of self. In the study of that which has been presented in the lessons, ye have gained this understanding. It is not sufficient to know the needs of this, or that individual. It is not alone sufficient that ye know concerning thy relationships with thy God, thy Saviour, thy fellow man, but ye must put on Christ, putting on the whole armor, that ye may stand steadfast in that ye have gained as the understanding of thyself, of thy relationships to thy Father, thy God, thy relationships to thy Saviour, to thy fellow man. For the understanding is to be doing something about that knowledge, that ye have gained concerning these things. No new word, for as he has given from the first, the earth is standing in the water and out of the water. So it is today in thine understanding, ye are within the world, and in thine study and thine meditation, without the world. Ye are within the water and without the water. Then know that he is the living water, that springs ever anew in thine acts, in thine associations, in thine relationships with thy fellow man. For as ye have done it unto the least of thy brethren, ye have done it unto the Lord, thy Christ, thy God. For as ye are in the world, use that thou hast in hand, that it, too, may know through thee the glory that thou hast had with the Father from the beginning. That is thine. Claim same, by that as ye have put on Christ ye are his. Not that it, the putting on, has made thee better than thine brother, for he that is the greatest among you will be the servant of all. Glory in the Christ, not in thyself. For his promises are sure. And he has given, that ye ask in my name believing, that shall be done unto you. Not that ye rest upon his activity, but having put on Christ, being his, ye become like him in thine dealings with thy fellow man. Know that self in the physical activative state is a part of the plan of salvation, of righteousness, of truth, of the creative forces or God in the earth. Each entity, then, is as a corpuscle in the body of that force called God. Those activities in which there has been the presentation, the manifestation of his love, his activity in the earth, are as the blood stream, while the spirit of consciousness is as the nerves of the body itself. Hence self, as an individual, is a manifestation of creative forces in action in the earth. Yet each entity finds itself with a body that seeks expression of itself, and with a mind that may take hold of those awarenesses of what the body represents, or presents, among men in the earth, or may become cognizant of the influences of which it, as an entity, is a part. There are, then, as given those influences in the nature of man that may supply that needed. For, man in his nature, physical, mental and spiritual, is a replica, is a part of whole universal reaction in materiality. Hence there are those elements which if applied in a material way, if there is the activity with same of the spirit and mind, may bring into the experience of each atom of the body force, or cell itself the awareness of the creative force or God. It may only rise as high as the ideal held by the body-mind. Hence there is the one way, the source. For in him is all life, all health, all mind, all knowledge and immortality to the soul-mind itself. In analyzing the purposes, the ideals, the urges latent and manifested in this entity, as has been indicated by some, ye are part and parcel of a universal consciousness or God, and thus all that is within the universal consciousness, or the universal awareness, as the stars, the planets, the sun, the moon. Do ye rule them, or they rule thee? They were made for thy own use, as an individual, yea, that is the part, the thought thy Maker, thy Father God thinks of thee. For ye are as a corpuscle in the body of God, thus a co-creator with him, in what ye think, in what ye do. And ye change each soul ye contact, literally or mentally, insofar as ye, as an individual entity, are a witness for or against thy Lord, thy God. This is the literal application, yea the spiritual way of man, of this entity in the earth, endowed, yes, with material attributes that to others may appear as a non-entity. Yet no soul may come in contact with the entity without being changed, either in body, in mind or in purpose. And purpose is, of course, of the soul. Thy body is indeed the temple of the living God. There he hath promised to meet thee. There he does commune with those that seek within the Holy of Holies. Then, the physical body is a pattern of the universal consciousness. While it may be as in shadow, if it is interpreted properly, the body is that which interprets the revelation, that which interprets, as to why there was the choosing of 12 disciples, 12 tribes. Give me any specific guidance in developing the pattern indicated above, which may be helpful at this point. None better than that as we have outlined. Know it is within self, and it is found, the manner of approach, in the 30th of Deuteronomy, and in the 14th, 15th, 16th and 17th of John. Not that other approaches may not be just as important, just as beautiful, but here the directions are crystallized into that of knowing thine own body is the temple. It is thy tabernacle. There he will meet thee. Seek not other entities. Not that many are not about, not that there is not the communion of saints, but there is also the communion of sinners. Ye seek not those. Let that light be in thee which was also in the Christ Jesus, who went about doing good, bearing his cross, as ye must indeed bear thy cross, but bearing it in him it brings peace, and most of all life everlasting, and hope and cheer. The entity finds self a body, a mind, a soul. There are attributes of the physical body that may or may not be controlled by mental forces and influences. There is the soul body that may not be controlled by, or may be controlled by, the good or the bad influence of spirit. These are as the shadows which were indicated in the mount by the outer court, the body, the inner court, the mind, and the still more holy of holies, the soul. These are but shadows, and yet indicate the trend of the development, just as the sojourns of an entity in, or during interims between earthly or material manifestations indicate the trend in which the soul through varied experiences, has sought an outlet, or an expression. For as the entity reasoned with the Essenes, as well as conversed with the wise men who came with the new messages to the world, the entity proclaimed, yea, that pronouncement that he himself then being announced had given. Others may do as they may, but as for me and my house, we will serve the living God. Do not interpret this to mean those who may be in thine own physical household. Thy house is indeed thy body, that is the temple of the living God. That is the whole house made to conform to the will, the way. He that loves me keeps my commandments, in body, in mind, in soul. One becomes aware, then, of the consciousness as to the needs of the body, the mind, the soul, through those influences or forces called the sensory system. One feels, one hears, one sees, one tastes that which to him is good. What causes this appearance, or conviction, or consciousness of its being good? Because it answers to a something within the real self, which is correlated with all of which the body, the mind, the soul has been aware or conscious. Whether the physical consciousness in the present is aware of same or not, the superconscious and the subconscious are also a part of this whole combination. Then, as we have the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, we have, in the awareness in materiality, body, mind, soul. The soul is the real self, the continuous self. The mind is the builder, continuous to the extent that it is constructive, taking hold upon spirituality in such a manner and way as to become constructive, and that which is constructive and good is continuous. Hence we find the body, physical, subject to the laws of the physical being, or the temperaments, the environments, the disappointments, the activities throughout, and all of these act both physically and mentally. The mental and spiritual bodies. In the same manner, the desires of our mental and spiritual bodies build our individualities. This process of building has been going on for ages. The great factors of heredity, environment, karma, thought vibration, and the action of universal laws in the planes beyond the physical all have their influences, just as the desires and vibrations of the physical organs attract and build the composition of the physical body. We are the results not only of the development of the race before us, but also of our individual development that has been going on since our creation, as individual souls. We are the sum total of all our experiences in every state of consciousness. In my Father's house are many mansions, states of consciousness. In our body temples we are building, by thoughts and acts, not only our physical bodies, but the mental and spiritual bodies as well. Christ, the Master, said, "Not that which goeth into the mouth defileth a man, but that which cometh out of the mouth, this defileth a man." Those of us who live to gratify only our fleshly bodies may be beautiful without, but we have so starved our souls that we are able to give out only that which makes for discord and corruption. In speaking of the scribes and Pharisees, Jesus said, "For ye are like unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones, and of all uncleanness. Even so ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within ye are full of hypocrisy and iniquity." The same principle may be applied to right thinking, for we become what we think. The soul will seek that which it has builded, not only in the material plane, but in the universal, for, as a tree falls, so will it lie. This is well understood if we know and study ourselves, for we will realize that each experience is a lesson to help bring the knowledge of the whole, that I and my Father are one. When we are seeking to lose ourselves in the whole, it is possible to see ourselves, as did the individual who had the following dream. I saw myself pass out of my body and become three bodies, physical, mental, and spiritual. At first the physical was the largest, but as the other two grew it gradually became smaller, until it finally faded into dust. The others then grew larger, and moved around fourth-dimensionally. When our acts and thoughts are measured by the standard of Christ, and when we reach the place where we desire only to be channels of blessings to others, we have lost sight of ourselves. Then we have the mind of Christ, for he came not to be ministered to, but to minister, and gave his life as a ransom for many. The Edgar Cayce readings. 3. The mental and spiritual bodies. We are physically that we have digested for the body. We are mentally that which we have thought, but it hasn't added one whit to the physical, has it? We are spiritually that we have digested in our mental beings. As indicated as a part of the body consciousness, that which a mind and a body entertains or applies becomes a part of that individual entity, shining forth in its relationships to men, as a personality, and shortly in that superconsciousness, as individuality that bears its relationship to the creative forces, or God. 4. That upon which the physical body lives, that which it assimilates, that it becomes in essence, in its nature. That upon which the mental man lives, or feeds, or that he digests, that he becomes, in the mental realm. The spiritual is ever aware. And there is only one spirit, that of good. As to the choice, or the application man makes of the spirit, this is up to the individual. That, then, as the entity has seen and understood, is the difference between individuality and personality of an individual, or single entity. How can the body develop to a greater business success in its present work? By the perfect understanding of self, and of its relations through those injunctions as given, one with another. That is, understand its relations to the individual and the individuals whom the body associates, giving of self in that manner and way that is rendering service to fellow man. The body is able, as given, and will attain to the success that it desires, when it knows the end of the desire. The desire without knowing the inmost recesses of that condition in which the body, physically, mentally, would be placed by receiving such desire, brings condemnation only to self. Know the law of the Lord is perfect. That thou hast measured, that thou hast sown, that thou must reap. Do it graciously, do it patiently, and ye will find grace and mercy, as ye show grace and mercy. Was the loss of my leg a karmic debt, and if so, what? This is an experience that is necessary for thy better unfoldment. Not as in payment for something, but that ye might know the truth that might set you free. 4. What ye are, as in each activity, gives a strength, or weakens thee, for the next lesson ye are to recite. How well ye will meet the problems as they are presented depends upon how well ye have mastered, and do master, the problems before thee from day to day. In the present, that of the stability of purpose, of the ideals innate in the entity. Hark to that experience, for whether the entity chooses in a field of that of the mental, of the spiritual, of the social, of the financial, when the entity looks from within, sets before self an ideal, forgets self as only the one that may do the biddings of the higher forces, the entity excels. First find that peace that ye seek in thine own soul, thine own conscience. For, as he has promised ever, when ye call I will hear, and answer speedily. But know ye cannot hold a grudge, ye cannot hold malice, ye cannot hold injustice. For as he has given, when ye come, leave thy prayer, leave thy offering until ye have made peace with thy brother, until ye have made peace with thyself. For until ye find it in the desire of thy heart, in the purpose of thy soul to know the truth, and to have peace within thine self, ye cannot have it with thy brother, thy neighbor, thy son, nor in thy home. Thou art aware of the physical consciousness that may arise from desire of body, of appetite, of that cultivated in thy daily experience. Thou art aware of the mental abilities of the body, the mind. So are there urges that stimulate these awarenesses in thy conscious experience. Thus all thou art is the result of what thou hast done about thy opportunities, thy ideals, here, now, and in those awarenesses in whatever realm of consciousness the soul entity has been active. But know rather, as has been given by him, in whatsoever state ye find thyself, of mind, of body, of physical condition, that is what ye have builded, and is necessary for thy unfoldment. If ye will but take him as thy guide wherever thou art, he will lead to that haven of rest, of harmony that is only found in him. In manifesting in the present, Just where should I draw the line between being a non-entity and expressing my individuality? Let the expressing be, as has been given above, the individuality of the Christ rather than a personality, or an individuality of self. Be selfless in Christ. Ask thyself, what would the Christ have me do? Don't be afraid, but be rather alive in that thou doest. When thou hast acted unseemly, what has been the promise, what is the manner he has taught thee to pray? As I forgive, may I be forgiven. Ask forgiveness, and he may forgive thee. Is experience limited to this earth plane? As each entity, each soul, in the various consciousnesses, passes from one to another, it, the soul, becomes conscious of that about self in that sphere, to which it, the entity, the soul attains in a materially manifested way or manner. Hence the entity develops through the varied spheres of the earth and its solar system, and the companions of varied experiences in that solar system, or spheres of development, or activity, as in some ways accredited correctly to the planetary influences in an experience. The entity develops through those varied spheres. Hence the sun, the moon, the stars, the position in the heavens or in all of the hosts of the solar systems that the earth occupies, all have their influence in the same manner. This is a very crude illustration, but very demonstrative, that the effect of a large amount of any element would attract a compass. Drawn to. Why? Because of the influence of which the mind element of a soul, an entity, has become conscious. A soul, an entity, is as real as a physical entity, and is as subject to laws as the physical body, as subject to the laws in a material world and the elements thereof. Self in relation to others. We should let neither flattery, criticism, nor opinions of others turn us aside from those vital things for which we stand, those things that are lifting us upward and building within us that which will endure until the end. Let us turn within to see if we are being true to ourselves when temptations arise. We know that we cannot be true to others unless we are first true to ourselves. As we cultivate the ability to discriminate between right and wrong, good and evil, we are reaching the plane where we may be masters of our destiny. It is found in keeping the whole law, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and thy neighbor as thyself. This is a spiritual desire, for the carnal mind is envious. There is in all of us that still voice that teaches sacrifice, love, and service, that warns of every catastrophe and protects from all danger. When it is listened to and followed, no mistakes are made, no wars are fought, no homes are broken up. For then we seek the good of our neighbors and the will of the Creator. Let us dare to see ourselves as others see us. It is well to stand aside and see ourselves go by. Let us think back over the words and acts of the day, asking ourselves these questions. Why did we do this or that? Would we have acted before our God in the manner we acted before our neighbor? Are we expressing our concepts of God in our lives to those we contact? It is indeed true that no man liveth to himself, and no man dieth to himself. It is well to know what the other person thinks of us. We must, without any feeling of shame or humiliation, be willing to be measured by the standard that we have given one the impression we hold. It is our duty to study and discipline ourselves so that each word and each action may reflect just what we would be, and not let them be so different that they are not recognized as children of the same family. While we are seeking to know ourselves through meditation, or by taking an inventory, we are passing, as it were, signposts. We see a little light day by day, or catch a word here, an idea there, from those we contact, who help us to realize that all are traveling along the same road. Truly, the better we know ourselves, the better we understand others. Does it not make us more tolerant of our neighbors if we see them as we are, or as we have been? Since service is the means of fulfilling our mission here, the question will naturally arise, who is this neighbor that we should serve? It is that person who is in need of help, whether the individual be friend or foe, regardless of his or her race or creed. When Jesus defined this question, he said, "Behold my mother and my brethren. For whosoever shall do the will of my Father which is in heaven, the same is my brother, and sister, and mother." If we measure our activities in the daily walks of life by the standard of the Christ, there will never be a regret. It is following the teachings of the Master that will lead more and more in the way toward a perfect understanding. Be what you seem. Live your creed. Hold up to earth the torch divine. Be what you pray to be made. Let the Master Jesus' steps be thine. The Edgar Cayce readings. 4. Self in relation to others. If ye would know love, ye must be lovely. If ye would have life, give it. What is life? God? In action with thy fellow man. This bringeth also a desire for expressions of self in many fields of activity, in the mental, in the social, in the home, in the economic reasonings and surroundings. Yes, all of these may be summed up: I am the Lord's. I will that his will direct, and will to do that which is in keeping with not what others think, not what others have said, but what I know. I am my ideal, the Christ, what he would have me say, and be, and do. Thus may the entity find in the humdrum of its associations, in the trials and cares of others, that song indeed that may be upon the heart and mind and lips of every soul: he walks and he talks with me. He goeth with me into the garden, in my joys, in my sorrows. He keepeth my hands, my feet steady in my ministry to my loved ones, to my friends, to my foes. For they are, too, his. And in me they may see that he walks and he talks with me. In analyzing the composite urges arising from an analysis of the sojourn during the interims between material experiences, we find here a body, a mind, a soul grown in grace, yet apparently circumstances have at times so subdued the body that in righteous wrath it has risen to meet situations. This is well. Do not put anything before the divine purpose within self. For all that each soul may know of the Creator is that which will answer to the Spirit of truth as the entity deals with the problems of the day. For it is here a little, there a little. God's purpose is ever growth. For ye grow in grace, in knowledge, in understanding. Where will I find my success, meaning distance, or remote parts means no obstacle. Begin where one is. Begin where you are. To attempt to run away from shadows, or from self, is to create a fear that is hard to overcome. Be sure your sins will find you out. Be sure your efforts, your attempts towards making all efforts, in loving God, eschewing evil, showing mercy and patience, doing that which is known to be right, will as readily find you out. Begin where you are, in whatsoever capacity the chance or condition presents itself, in the fields of activity in which the body knows itself to be mentally and physically efficient to a greater or lesser degree. Find and know confidence can be placed in self by self. If it cannot, how can it be placed there by anyone else? To run away from that as would trouble does not alleviate responsibility, nor does the shifting of responsibility relieve the body conscience, or the body ability, of that as the mental being is responsible for. When anyone, feels there is only a one side to a trouble, he may be very sure he, the individual, is selfish in his own outlook, and is warped in his judgment by same. In the present there is that innate, or of any religious service, of any cult. Any purport of a service brings, or a respect of the one so serving. Unless there's seen that same is a sham, then abhorrence comes to the entity. Then, as an innate experience in the present, the entity may be trusted as to word given, often to its own undoing, if governed or judged by the material-minded body, but remain true to that though the heavens fall. For being true to self brings that satisfaction, that does not breed contempt, nor does it bring dishonor or shame. Does fire burn the soul, or the physical body? Yet, self may cast self into a fire element by doing that the soul knows to be wrong. What would make a wrong and a right? A comparison of that the soul knows its consciousness to be in accord or contrariwise with, in relation to that which gave it existence. Then it would behoove the entity to first study what is the law of the Lord thy God. It is bound up in the admonition that thou shalt love the Lord with all thy mind, thy heart and thy soul, and thy neighbor as thyself. The laws pertaining to same are ever true, that the manner in which ye treat thy fellow man ye are treating thy Maker. The seed ye sow ye shall also reap. The measure with which ye mete to others must come back to thee. These are immutable, unchangeable. Then, what have ye done? What will ye do with these laws, these privileges, these opportunities? How may I cultivate a better approach in meeting people? Much in the manner and way as the oaf that hunted the horse. Think of how you would like to be treated. Then treat the other fellow that same way. Cultivate that, and you will build a personality that may be not surpassed by any. Just meet every one as you would like them to meet you. In meeting a friend, a foe, an employer, a teacher, a minister, think not of their position, but rather that you, as an emissary of the Lord of Lords, are meeting thyself. This is what is meant by, and thy neighbor as thyself. In such a manner, in such a mean, may one build a smile that will make the whole world glad, a handshake that will make the whole world happy. These are not trite, these are truth. Apply them. For they are not as sayings, but are practical, applicable experiences for thee, if ye will but use them. For know, as ye meet to thy fellow man, so is it meted unto thee. God is not mocked, and whatsoever an individual or soul soweth, that must he also reap. As ye have seen from the experiences, ye are constantly meeting thyself, thy purpose, thy service, and in being first true to thine own self in body, in mind, in spirit, ye cannot be false to any. What can I best do to help my son, physically and materially? By precept, by example, give to him that cheer, that knowledge, that hope, that self-living aright and God upon his side, is greater than having the world on thy side and God left out. For one soul with God is in the majority. As in dreams, those forces of the subconscious, when taken or correlated into those forms that relate to the various phases of the individual, give to that individual the better understanding of self, when correctly interpreted, or when correctly answered. Forget not that it has been said correctly that the Creator, the gods and the God of the universe, speak to man through this individual self. Man approaches the nearer condition of its approach to that field when the normal is at rest, sleep or slumber, and when more of the forces are taken into consideration, and are studied by the individual, not someone else. It is the individual's job, each individual's condition, each individual's position, each individual's relation, each individual's manifestation, each individual's receiving the message from the higher forces themselves, and for each individual to understand if they will study, to show themselves approved. Extremes have been and will be a part of the experience. But for the entity with its disappointments, its sorrows, its shames at times, there should be applied those same tenets in self as in relationships to others. As he who is the way gave, neither do I condemn thee, go and sin no more. These should be kept first and foremost in the experience of the entity, and in applying the experiences of life one with another, learn that as long as there is life there is hope, there is opportunity. Stop, consider, listen to the promptings deep within self. Know that He, Father God, is mindful of thee, but the very fact that ye still have the opportunity in self to know thyself, and to desire and to hope and to wish for those changes, as should come into thine own experience, that ye may never condemn thyself. If he condemns thee not, why condemn thyself? And if he condemns not, it matters not what others may think. Then apply in thy experience, in thy relationships, in thy associations one with another, knowing, as he has given, inasmuch as ye do it unto the least of these my children, ye do it unto me. Today, as ye will hear his voice, then turn, know in whom ye believe, knowing that he is able to forgive sin in the earth, in the mental, yea in the hereafter. For, even to that one on the cross he gave, today thou shalt be with me in paradise. So with thee in thy seeking, in thy own stumbling manner listen to that voice within. Or, even as a man, Abraham, the son of faith, the author of faith, offered, or was willing to offer, his only son, his physical heir, knowing that there must be a purpose from that inner voice as to that command. That ye ask in my name, believing, that shall ye have within yourself. Do not, then, in asking, make conditions, but surrender self unconditionally into the hands of the divine from within, and that from within shall answer even as was said, my spirit beareth witness with your spirit that ye are called the sons, the daughters, of the living God. For in him only is that peace, and the blessings of those whom the body contacts will bring the greater joy, the greater happiness. Study to show thyself approved unto God in every phase of thy experiences. This does not indicate, neither does it intimate, that there is to be only long-facedness, nor a constant condemning of self for this, or that not being in thine experience. For this is not dividing nor divining the words of truth, and that must be the experience of every one. For if thy relationships with thy creative energies and forces and ideals do not make thee a better son, a better neighbor, a better brother, a better citizen, there's something wrong with thy concept of the ideal. And unless such an activity brings joy, gladness, happiness and willingness to be the servant of all, yet willing to be the Lord of all, yet humble, there is still something wrong. For he that is the greatest servant is the Lord of the many, and he that seeks in the life's service and the life's activity to give not just a day's labor, but more, not just making the grade, but willing and active in making more. He that would induce thee to go the mile, go twain. This is the law, this is grace, this is mercy. This is as he lived, and only asks that each follow in his way, and not only follow, but he will lead and direct thee to activity, and will comfort and sustain, if you will trust wholly in him. If thy activity in living thy ideal makes thee as one aloof, something then is wrong. If it makes thee better as a social companion, this is the right. Why is suicide considered wrong? Have we the right to leave the body? So long as there are those that depend upon the body. And how hath it been given? No man liveth to himself, no man dieth to himself. No man hath been so low that some soul hath not depended upon, relied upon same for strength. Thus we find while there may be those experiences, these are rather of a selfish nature. But remember he gave, those that would offend one of these, my little ones, better that a millstone were hanged about his neck and he were cast into the depths of the sea. Then, when thine whole body and the purposes of thine mind as to do evil, well that they be separated from the channel, or the means of bringing offense. For, as ye analyze thyself and thy relationships with thy fellow men day by day, ye realize the fact, the truth, that inasmuch as ye do it unto the least of thy brethren, ye do it unto me. Then ye realize with what manner of judgment ye may expect, ye may desire to be judged by that part of thyself, which is to be glorified only in thy daily application, use, or the admonitions in the use of same towards others. Then as ye realize and apply that, it does not become a matter of what one professes to believe, or what one says with the mouth, but what one does in secret, in the mind, in the self, toward that it professes and admonishes, and insists that others believe. And such activities of thy inner mind and of thy outer expression, are to be wholly consistent one with another. In judgment, as in mental self, it must be exacting, but no more exacting of others than of self, and no more exacting of self than of others. For, know, with what measure ye mete to others ye are measuring to thy Maker, God. Know that all the creative force ye may become aware of is within thine own self. For, as thy body is indeed the temple of the living God, there he has promised to meet thee. In the application of self in training, teaching, directing others, may the entity find the greater outlet. Yet study thyself the more. And this will enable thee to interpret others and their motives. Not as judgments, for if ye would not be judged then ye do not judge others. Please tell me if this is my own father in this appearance, and is Adolf my brother. Who is thy father, who is thy mother? They that do the things necessary in thy experience that ye may learn, that ye may know, thy heavenly Father the better. These are thy material parents. Then aid them in seeing, not by preaching, not by mere precept, but by living a normal, balanced, godly life among them. Is there some karmic debt to be worked out with either or both, and should I stay with them until I have made them feel more kindly toward me? These? What is karmic debt? This ye have made a boogaboo. This ye have overbalanced within thyself. What is thy life, but the gift of thy Maker that ye may be wholly one with him? Thy relationships to thy fellows through the various experiences in the earth come to be then in the light of what creative forces would be in thy relationships to the act itself. And whether it be as individual activities to those who have individualized as thy father, thy mother, thy brother or the like, or others, it is merely self being met, in relationships to that they themselves are working out, and not a karmic debt between, but a karmic debt of self that may be worked out between the associations that exist in the present. And this is true for every soul. If ye will but take that as was given thee. Neither do I condemn thee, neither do I condemn thee. Who gave that? Life itself. Not a personality, not an individual alone, though individually spoken to the entity, to the soul that manifests itself in the present in the name called 1436. This becomes then not an incident, but as a lesson, that all may learn. That is the reason, that is the purpose, that is why in the activity much should be expected, why much shall be endured, why much may be given, by the soul that has learned that God condemns not they that seek to know his face and believe. Then it is not karma, but in him that the debt is paid. For who forgave thee thy material shortcomings, thy material errors, as judged by thy superiors at that experience in the material world? Thy Lord, thy Master, thyself. For he stands in thy stead, before that willingness of thy inner self, thy soul, to do good unto others, that willingness, that seeking is righteousness, if ye will but understand, if ye will but see, and forget the law that killeth, but remember the spirit of forgiveness that makes alive. For as the entity applies self, as the varied experiences become a part of thy problems, some ye have faced, some ye have turned thy back upon. Remember, ye cannot run away from thyself. Remember the lesson as of old, thy brother's blood crieth unto thee from the ground, and thou art thy brother's keeper. And who is thy brother? He that needs thee, in any phase of his experience, any seeker after truth and justice and right, he is thy brother, of whatever land or whatever clime. They that are sufficient unto themselves need not the physician, but they as thyself, that crieth, Lord, Lord, they need thy strengthening arm, thy encouragement. Know that as ye do it unto the least of thy brethren, much less flesh of thy flesh, or the choice of thy blood, ye do it unto thy Maker. Hence hold fast to him, his ways, his manners of approach to all phases of human endeavor. For remember, he was human as well as divine. So art thou divine, to the extent that thou keepest his ways. And thy prayer should ever be, thy will, O Lord, not mine, be done in and through me. He, that Christ consciousness, is that first spoken of in the beginning when God said, Let there be light, and there was light. And that is the light manifested in the Christ. First it became physically conscious in Adam. And as in Adam we all die, so in the last Adam, Jesus, becoming the Christ, we are all made alive. Not unto that as of one, then. For we each meet our own selves, even as he, though this did not become possible, practical in a world experience, until he, Jesus, became the Christ and made the way. Thus he became the first of those that within self arose to righteousness. Thus may we, as individuals, as we apply ourselves, become aware of that abiding presence as he promised, yea, as he maintained, If I go away I will send the Spirit of truth, the Spirit of righteousness, and he shall abide with you. And I and the Father will come. Self in relation to creative force. By keeping in touch with the creative force, we rise above the conditions where the blind lead the blind, and we know that we are guided by the all-seeing eye in all we are called to do. If I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. If I take the wings of the morning, and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there shall thy hand lead me. Let us awake and know that God is speaking to us, leading us, and protecting us, that his Spirit is even now bearing witness with our spirit that we are children of God. As the voices of our souls cry out to their Creator, let us not doubt the promise, he that hungers and thirsts after righteousness shall be filled. It may come as the wind, we may not know from whence, but all who seek will know that his name is I Am That I Am, who is speaking in his holy temple, the body. That is the true awakening. There is, indeed, a physical body, a mental body, and a spiritual body, and they are one. One in love, one in truth, one in service, and one in him. The Edgar Cayce readings. 5. Self in relation to creative force. Hence as a teacher, as an instructor, should the entity be led by the way of life, and light, and truth, and thus teach others. 4. If the blind lead the blind, they that accept a prophet in the name of the prophet receive the prophet's reward, though even the prophet may be at variance to those tenets, which might bring others to an understanding, or an interpreting. But they are both of the way. 4. He that climbeth up some other way fooleth himself, and is not wise. How can I keep from worrying so much about my wife's health? Why worry, when you may pray? Know that the power of thyself is very limited. The power of creative force is unlimited. Thy abilities are efficient, and in him sufficient, to accomplish that which may bring a life experience of joy and of worthwhileness through this sojourn. Of thyself ye may do little, but in him ye may accomplish much. The first anxiety, the first awareness of which each soul should become cognizant or seek earnestly, is that God is conscious of thee. And the very fact of your own awareness should ever remind thee of this. If each soul would or could become aware of that, how much difference there might be in the choices made day by day. 4. The first awareness would be that truly in him ye live, ye move, ye have thy being. Thus the necessity of daily keeping before thee an ideal, spiritual, mental and material, realizing that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Hence it is reminding man that today, now, every day, there is set before him good and evil, life and death. Man does not find other than that answer outside himself, as expressed in that spiritual discernment, my spirit beareth witness with thy spirit. Thus, as the lawgiver interpreted, lo, he is within thee. Man's discerning of that he would worship, then, is within self, how that he, the individual entity, makes manifest in his dealings daily with his fellow men that God is, and that the individual entity is in body, in mind, in soul, a witness of such. And thus he loveth, he treateth his brother as himself. Such an admonition has in man's interpretation oft put God, the mighty, the Lord, as far away. And yet he recognizes, if he accepts this admonition of the lawgiver, that he is within self. Again, know the author of not only thy faith, but of thy confidence as well, and be assured not only from personal experience, but from that which such has accomplished in the hearts and the souls of men, in that such authorities are able to measure up, yea, to keep inviolate, through that form or manner of experience, that which is committed unto them. Such knowledge, such interpretations of authorities, would only be found by the answers from within. 4. My spirit beareth witness with thy spirit, is an immutable, an unchanging law. And again, the heavens, the earth may pass away, but his laws shall not pass away. The satisfying of self's own curiosity, the seeking to know what others say, the advantage of knowing what others think, rather than that I am. That I am is a portion of the great I am and thus is in consciousness for the preparation, for the schooling, for the gaining of that estate where curiosity, selfishness, self-desire is to be left alone. The loves, the activities in the social life, the activities in the marital life, make for disturbing forces. Duties of either portion of such experience seem to be lost sight of in the moment of self-will, self-expression. No, self is the only excuse. Self is the only sin, that is, selfishness, and all the others are just a modification of that expression of the ego. But so close is the ego, the I am, to the great I am, that the confusions of duty and privilege and opportunity become so enmeshed in the experience of the entity. And so great are the abilities of the entity to make of this experience a glory for the living God, that to fail would be indeed calamitous in the experience of this soul. Happiness, then, is not a thing set apart from self, but the conditions with which one approaches that in hand to be done. For when one considers that the position of self is hard to bear, is not as is desired, the desire of the heart often maketh one afraid, unless that desire is ever in that attitude of use me, O God, as I am. For the I am is ready, willing, to make my will one with thy will, though he slay me, though he bruise me in mine own selfish or unseen ways. Yet will I trust him day by day, and he will not forsake thee, neither will he allow thee to be afraid. For he will raise thee up, and he understands all the hardships, the little things, the separations, the variations in the surroundings, but trust him. Know, as given, thy body, thy mind and thy soul are one. Where ye have fallen short is in the recognition of that, even as the Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit are one. In what? Not body, not mind, but in purpose, in hope, in desire, those things that are invisible yet, are the ruling influences in the application of the relationships of individuals one to another. Individualized, they are not one; spiritualized, they are one. The awakening of self. Our physical bodies, our mental bodies, and our soul bodies are but shadows of the triune. The body physical is as human. The body mental is as the savior of humanity. For it is through the application of the mental influences that we would control and build that which finds expression in the physical and in the soul. The body-soul is made in the image of the Creator, and made to be a companion in spirit. The physical body is the house, the home of the soul, during a sojourn in the material world. What we do with the opportunities that are presented in our various experiences gives expression to those powers that are lent to our souls and our bodies in their passage through the earth. As the knowledge of the awakening of our soul forces is applied in our relationship to our fellow human beings, we come to realize our relationship to our Maker. For, as ye do it unto one of the least of these, ye do it unto me. For us to be aware of our physical desires and appetites is physical awakening. To satisfy them selfishly is sin. This is illustrated in the experience of our first parents. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. When we become aware that the mind can control the physical desires, then we have a mental awakening. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. This is an illustration of one who stood firm in the light of a mental awakening, even though it was seemingly a sacrifice of life itself. When we are conscious that we can reconcile the spirit within with the spirit without and know that they are one and are from the same source, God, then we have a spiritual awakening. This was manifested perfectly in Jesus, the Master, in his daily life among people. An awakening is the natural thing, when we attune ourselves to the source of all good, allowing his Spirit to bear witness with our spirit. We are awakened then to the knowledge that we are, indeed, children of God. We show forth our spiritual awakening by our patience, tolerance, long-suffering, and forbearance, not being willing that any should suffer, but that all should come to the knowledge of the truth. When we practice these virtues in our daily lives, we become masters among others. The Edgar Cayce readings. 6. The awakening of self. For the entity finds itself body, mind and soul, and recognizes, or may become aware of the manifestation of the Godhead in the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. He finds himself then a counterpart, a shadow of all that is, and that within his own self each cell of its body is but a miniature of the universe without its own body, its own cell of positive and negative force that applies to the material, the mental and the spiritual. Indeed then the body is the temple of the living God, where he hath promised to meet thee in thy searching, in thy seeking to know what ye may do. Not for the gratifying of thine own selfish self alone, but to fulfill the purpose for which he came into being, to be then an emissary, an advocate, yea, a sign, that others who have lost their way, as ye may have lost thine, may take hope, and gain a more awareness of the God force that is latent and manifested within thine own self. Live, be in that awareness. Not that it is not ever to be made practical, daily. For, in a material world one's religion, one's spirituality must be lived rather than preached, yet in the mental awareness one may be holy in that temple. For, thy body is indeed the temple of the living God. There he has promised to meet thee. Become aware of that indwelling in the Holy of Holies in thine own temple self. For, the mind is the builder in the spiritual world. It is the way, even as he is the way. For, as the emotions from the activities in other awarenesses in the consciousness of earth become manifested, by the opportunities in the desires, in the consciousness of flesh awareness, it is that ye have done with thy ideal in other experiences, making the basis upon which ye will build in this, save in that respect in which ye through thy mental ability make him thy builder, thy companion. For he, being the way, the truth, the light, is indeed the master builder, and, set as the head, as the ideal in thy activity, may guide thy life, thy ways into the harbor of safety that is only in him. What, then, is the purpose of this discussion? Ye find thy body, thy mind, thy soul, thy body the temple of the living God, thy mind the connecting and communicating link with the divine, through which ye may ever receive the answer, if ye will but hearken. For, mind is the builder. That a mind can ask a question signifies, as ye are a part of the divine, that the answer is within self. And the true answer can only be experienced by self. That which has been pointed out here, in a very poor manner, may arouse within self the realization that of thyself ye may do little, but that as he, thy Saviour, thy God, worketh in and through thee, ye may make thy portion, yea, all portions of the earth a better place for man to live in. In thy daily dealings, then, let that first principle be set, in love preferring him before any, and in application let him direct the way. Would that all souls would, comprehend that great sentence, which has been, is, the motivating force in all who seek. Not in all who impel, but in all who seek to live, who seek to manifest, who seek to give expression of God's force or power. For, as all power is ordained of him, so acknowledge same in thy expressions of that which brings faith and hope and brotherly love and kindness. For these are the fruits of the Spirit of truth, that take hold upon, and bring one into, the chamber, into the Holy of Holies, where he makes himself known, even to his brethren, as he did in those lands so long ago, with which he was so closely associated or affiliated. In the influences which arise innately and manifestedly from Neptune, we find the forces or powers of the earthly mother, water, as an influence, coming more in the form of the warning regarding the occult or mystic powers. These are children of doubt and fear, yea, they are also children of light. But know their import. Know that their manifestations have oft sought personal manifestation, as in the spirits of those who sought in the beginnings for personal gratification, when the very evolution of materiality presented an opportunity. Thus they brought to themselves confusion, as well as the necessity of man's own materiality, by encasement in matter. Then, seek that such be even as he gave. A sign cannot be given, may not be given, to an adulteress, to a sinful generation, but only to those whose cry is oft, and sincere, create within me a righteous heart, O God, and renew a righteous spirit within me. These are not words alone, but are as that which applied in one's daily life may lead to an opening of the veil which enters into the Holy of Holies, even as that veil which was rent when his spirit cried unto his God. Then, make that God, his God, thy God. What do ye worship? Might, spirit, power, impulse, hope, or what? Whose power seek ye? Thine own, or that in thy weakness ye may be made strong by his abiding light in thee. What is there wrong about my personality, which is holding me back, physically, mentally? Nothing, save the proper evaluation, or value of experiences of every nature in their proper sphere of activity and relationships. These extremes that have come into the experience, that have made for the unbalancing of those very activities, as we have given in regard to the physical forces of the body as related to the mental and spiritual self, indicate just that as we have given improper valuation in the experience. Know that life is God, life in self then is God. Then the use of God in its relationships to others is to do to others what you would have others do to you, or have your God do to you. For as ye do it unto others ye are doing it to the God in yourself. Thus you are by example, as well as precept making for the true relationships to creative forces, that may aid thee from without to the influence or force of God within self. No, rather, as has been indicated, all knowledge that ye may have is within self. For thy body, thy mind, thy soul, is a part of that universal consciousness. Thus ye become aware of same. But no, the application of same is not to the glory of self but to him, who is the way, the truth and the light. Thus may ye find more and more that awareness that his promises are sure, as ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. This is not merely a saying, but a consciousness to which each soul may attain in its interpreting of his, the divine consciousness in its relationships to others. And in the manner ye treat thy fellow man, that ye do to thy Maker. For with what measure ye meet, it is measured to thee again. And whether or not there is the attaining in self, the try may be counted to thee for righteousness. Then, in attaining that as may be the outlet for thy abilities, choose that most in keeping with thy purposes, thy aims, thy desires. Are thy desires and thy purposes ideal, in thine own consciousness? What is thy ideal, spiritually? Then from that may be gained the ideal mentally. And the material is the outgrowth of those two. Thus may ye come to know thyself and thy relationship to thy creative forces, as ye choose those directions that the manner in which ye treat thy brother is the manner in which thy growth is attained. For if thou art God's, if thou art living in his ways, if thou art doing his biddings day by day, they that mistreat thee, they that condemn thee, they that find fault are finding same with God and not with thee. For unless ye are to use the experiences of thy activities, under any circumstance, as a constructive thing, as a constructive experience, of what use is it? This does not imply that all joy, all happiness, even all the gratifying of the emotions of the physical being are to be submerged or are to be pushed back, neither is it that they are to be gratified, but rather as he has shown the way. Then if it is used to that of self-indulgence, self-gratification, self-attaining for that of self alone, it becomes sin, even as the sin of Saul. Know thyself first. Look within thine own heart. What is it ye would purpose to do? Satisfy thine own appetites. Satisfy thine own desire for power or glory, for fame or fortune. These, as ye have experienced and as ye know within thy deeper self, easily take wings and fly away. Only those things that are just, those things that are beautiful, those things that are harmonious, that arise from brotherly kindness, brotherly love, patience, hope and graciousness, live. Only those who know God, or have sought him may interpret even his walks among men. So, be mindful, as he warned Thomas, Philip, Andrew and Peter, as well as showed to James and John, that these things are oft hard to be understood by those who may only know that which answers to the sensuousness consciousness of an entity. Not the senses as the higher realm, but sensuousness that begets, and its children are lasciviousness and those forces that engorge or indulge in those things that gratify appetites, and those things that become a part of many, who become self-indulgent in habit-forming, habit-creating. For, the animal man is a creature of habit. But learn rather from such the lesson, and not become so much a part of same. For in nature and in the animal instincts we find only the expressions of a universal consciousness of hope, and never of fear, save created by man in his indulging in the gratification of material appetites. Then, as to how these may be used, and that to which the entity may develop and rise, well, that all be studied in the light of this: service to others, the greatest service to the Creator. The desire to seek the greater forces will gradually bring, draw, make, accomplish the desired end in the same manner, as pennies accumulated finally reach to the desired amount for any purchase. Apply all rules pertaining to life to that. For the Lord loveth those that show patience and mercy and love and hope to their fellow man. For unto the souls of men is committed the keeping, the awakening, the awareness of God's love in the earth. Then, let thy yeas be yea, thy nays be nay, in thy study of his ways, divining and dividing the words of truth in their proper phase and proper dealing with thy fellow man, and keeping self unspotted from the world. How long should I live in this incarnation? To 150. If there is the turning. Here we find much may be said aside from these. There is the fault in the flesh of not housing the soul, by the abuse of the body. If there is the feeding of the body that the soul may find the greater expression by the activities of the mental mind, the soul and spiritual mind may have the greater opportunities to express itself. For, as has been given in that command with the promise, honor thy father, thy mother, that thy days may be long in the land which the Lord, thy God giveth thee. Who is thy father? Who is thy mother? They that do the will of thy Father in heaven, they that do that which makes for the glorifying, the purifying, of the lives, the associations of one with another. These as ye honor in thine activity with thy fellow man, ye bring not only that which renews thy strength in thy days in the earth, but bring or give to thy fellow man that opportunity for the awakening to those influences from within that may make them aware also of their relationship to their God. Conclusion. Let us realize that we should so live in body and in mind that we may be channels through which the creative forces may flow. Let us give more attention to our thoughts. For thoughts are deeds and are children of the union of the mind and the soul. What we think continually we become. What we cherish in our minds is built into our own physical bodies, becoming not only food for our souls, but also the soul's heritage in realms of other experiences. Will is an attribute of the soul. We must recognize by exercising it that we either make ourselves one with our Maker, or separate ourselves from Him. With the will we can either adhere to or contradict those immutable laws set between the Creator and the created. Let us determine within ourselves that a constructive program will be followed. The conditions of this program, then, require that a definite stand be taken by each of us. We are determined that we will adhere to it, no matter what we may suffer mentally or physically. We will trust in the divine force within for the strength to endure, and for the ability to say no when we should. We will consider the needs of others before our own. May we study to show ourselves approved unto God in body, mind, and soul. May we become less and less aware of the desires to gratify the carnal forces of the body. Is our purpose in life to gain power, position, wealth, and to satisfy the longings of the flesh? Are we to lose our own souls by so doing? It is for us to choose. The Christ stands ready to help. Shall we bar the door of our own consciousness? Father, as we seek to see and know thy face, may we each, as individuals and as a group, come to know ourselves, even as we are known, that we, as lights in thee, may give the better concept of thy Spirit in this world. The Edgar Cayce Readings. 7. Conclusion. What medium will offer me the greatest comfort to forget the unpleasant memories of a most unhappy past caused by my diagnosis and associations? He that does not look upon past experiences as stepping stones for better conditions is not worthy of betterment in his experience. Do physically and mentally that which is known to be the measures and means for fitting self, physically and mentally, for better reactions, and build upon the future, using that ability mentally and physically, forgetting, leaving behind that which has caused distress either mentally or physically. Remember, the mental attitude will build that in the physical in line with that held. Then, look up, lift up the heart, the mind, to those better things that are ever before those that will seek to know, to do right, justice and mercy, eschewing evil and doing with the might what the hands find to do. This is the whole duty of man. In all thy getting, my son, get understanding. That of self. When one understands self, and self's relation to its maker, the duty to its neighbor, its own duty to self, it will not be false to man, or to its maker. Give then more thought, for thoughts are deeds, and are children of the relation reached between the mental and the soul, and has its relation to spirit and soul's plane of existence, as they do in the physical or earth plane. What one thinks continually, they become. What one cherishes in their heart and mind they make a part of the pulsation of their heart, through their own blood cells, and build in their own physical, that which its spirit and soul must feed upon, and that with which it will be possessed, when it passes into the realm for which the other experiences of what it has gained here in the physical plane, must be used. If the beings builded in self mentally have been anxiety, fear, trembling, hate, and those things that are founded in fear, then indeed there must be turmoil within thyself. For thy spiritual self, thy soul, rebels against disorder, in harmony. For love would rule. Else there would not be the fruit, the seed of thy body manifested in the material planes. Else ye would not find desire running as rampant in thy inner self. But are these desires, these hopes, these loves founded in creative forces that are of his making? All things are subject unto thy will. So also the will of the individual entity to know God is subject to the choice that is made in the activity of the impulses that arise. For, in the interpreting of same, know that no urge, no influence surpasses the will of the individual. That is the birthright from the creative force, or God, to the individual entity or soul, that the entity, by its choice, may be one with him. The attributes of the soul and spirit are as many, and as many more, as the attributes of the physical or mental mind. Each, in the beginning, endowed with that same condition, position. Each, in itself, building to itself, through its development known through the ages, as called from the earth plane, that which is manifest upon the earth. With each development, that force, known upon the plane as will, is given to man over and above all creation. That force that may separate itself from its maker. For with the will man may either adhere or contradict the divine law, those immutable laws, as are set between the Creator and the created. The study of these, through their phases and forms, and especially through any of those phases, wherein the carnal, or material, or normal forces are laid aside, and the ever-present elements of spirit and soul commune with those of the forces as found in each entity. Study those and know thyself. Know that thy mind is the builder, and that it is true, as given in the days of yore, that today, now, there is set before thee good and evil, life and death, choose thou. For with the will, that is the heritage of each soul, thou choosest that which is to bring, or will and does bring harmony or peace, or destructive forces with their attributes of every nature. The spirit of the law of love, not the outward expression of same, but the spirit of the law, as interpreted in the life, in the manner in which he met those day by day. Not that any individual may force another, then. For, God himself forces no individual to seek him, save by the natural law. It must be free will, that which was given as the birthright to man, as that which the entity here has applied, may apply, the true law of love, not of self, but of him who giveth all things to all men. For it is not of self, but by the grace, by the mercy, by the love of and for the fellow man, not that self must be or even may be exalted in name, in place, in position. For he thought it not robbery to make himself equal with God, yet came from God's presence that others, his brethren might know, that his activities would offer for man the way. Study then, first, the 14th, 15th, 16th and 17th of John. Apply them, as this is Jesus speaking to 853, speaking. What is thy answer? I am ready, Lord. Or, as soon as I get this done, I'll try. These ye must answer within thyself. For the will of each entity, of each soul, is that which individualizes it, that makes it aware of itself, and as to how this is used makes thee indeed a child of God. He hath not willed that ye should perish, that ye should want, that ye would not know him. What have ye willed? What is thy way? What is thy desire? It becomes then so simple that the simplicity becomes the complexness of the daily life. No, as you analyze yourself, these are unalterable truths. God is, and to him first you owe all allegiance. Or you work with or against that divine within. Not that ye separate God and become as a servant, but as the Master so oft indicated, I and the Father are one, I am thy brother, ye are co-creators with God. Be ye holy, even as your Father in heaven is holy. Know that there is only one Spirit, and that thou possessest thy measure of same. Thy will is given thee to use or abuse that Spirit. For, the Spirit is of the Creator, and thy body is the temple of that Spirit manifested in the earth to defend, or to use in thine own ego, or thine own self-indulgence, or to thine own glory, or unto the glory of him who gave thee life and immortality, if he preserve that life, that Spirit in him. What greater message, what greater faith, what greater hope can there be builded than to know just this, that God in Jesus cares, and is willing, even with all thy waywardness, to comfort, to cheer, to bring peace out of storm, to quiet the tempest of thy mind, to quiet the fears of thy body, to quiet the spirit of thyself that is a portion of God, and that ye overcrowd so oft with the cares of the flesh that ye crowd its influence out of thy life. Ye starve it, that may feed the thousands, that may feed thyself. And the entity through some of the hardships, has brought into the present experience those tendencies, for a secretive nature, to keep things to self, satisfying self, that to burden others with that which troubles, or that which discourages, only adds to same. Take thy trials, thy temptations with Jesus in thy walks with him, and these disturbing forces in thine experience will disappear. How can I learn to interpret and understand such karmic relations and obligations, as may require effort on my part in working out? Each soul is a portion of the Maker. The soul body may have indulged here, gormandized self there, thus creating that which is to be met in him. He, the giver of life, thy brother, the Christ, has made a way for thee. For the life line still holds, when thou knowest within thine self thou art waging war within thyself. Though the conditions about you, about any soul, may be as torments, by the activities, the speeches, the obligations of others, they are only used as puppets, and are as nothing but that self may overcome those influences. And thus does the soul comprehend and understand that in him, the Maker, the Christ, only is light, and that self lost in him may meet all karmic forces, and that which has been the easily besetting error, or sin becomes as a stepping stone for a closer walk with him. Each soul finds itself in body, in mind, in that place in which it, itself, as an entity, as a whole, is meeting only its own self. Who is able then? Who hath promised then, that when ye are in doubt, when ye are set about by fears and doubts that he will answer, that he will direct? Is it self? No. For self is inclined to forget the promises, and look for the moment alone. But thy body is the temple of the living God, and he has promised to meet thee in thine own tabernacle. For the kingdom is within, and there he hath promised to meet thee. Then seek while he may be found. For as he hath given, if ye will but be my children, I will be thy God, and though ye wander far, when ye call I will hear, and will answer thee speedily. There is the physical body, we find, with its attributes, its desires, its appetites, that may be so exercised, in the appetites, as to preclude the real desire. Then we find there is a mental body, through which the physical functions, as well as through which the spiritual attributes function. Thus it is evidence that there is a mental body, that which is the builder for weal, or woe according to the judgments, or the choice of the relationships in the experience of the entity as to bring the influences within the activities. Then we find there is the spiritual body, or the soul. Of this the entity may only become aware when in those periods or conditions where anxieties respecting others become apparent within the experience of self, or that longing which is a part of each soul's experience for the continuity of that which is constructive within the experiences of the body, mind and soul. It is from such a premise, then, that we would approach the problems of this entity in this experience. As we find then, it becomes necessary, and behooves the body, mind and soul of the entity, to take counsel with the best that is within self, and know what is thy ideal. What are thy hopes for eternity, as ye come to think of same? Not as in fear, not as in doubt, but in whom have ye put thy trust, thy faith, thy hope, thy love? For it is not all of life to have the answering for the moment to the gratifying of appetite, or desire, or for the bodily emotions of same. But where, with whom, in whom have ye put thy trust? Is it able to keep thee in body, in mind, in soul, safe from all fear, all doubt? Does it supply the love that brings peace and understanding and comprehension? Ye know, then, that it must be founded in the spiritual attributes, and that it is just as necessary to consider from whence ye came, as it is to consider whither thou goest. For what purpose are ye in materiality? What hath given thy body these desires? Thyself and thy judgments of creative forces within thine own body, mind and soul. Yea, and for what? The opportunities that ye may glorify that creative force in such measures and manners that all of eternity becomes as the thought not of self, but unto the glory of him in whom ye live and move and have thy being.